the first question is, what do you think about the difference between men and women in society? And under gender equality, what are the differences between men and women that we have to accept?
Okay. Well, I don't think, let me start differently. I think for many, many years, in many societies, men have always been seen to be the ones who lead, have more courage, etc. They have been seen to be at the top. Women have often been seen as more kindly, not doing the same things as men who were there, if you like, the hunters, the gatherers. But I think you can see now that in most things, women do what men do. Women are soldiers, women go to war, women fly aeroplanes, women are engineers. So actually, there are not many jobs in society that men and women cannot do equally. We have a woman who's a queen. We've had a woman prime minister. Women can do many, many things. Of course, there are some deeply physical things. I mean, we are not physically as strong as men, and I accept that, of course. So there will be some difference, but do we need this? So, we have just as good a brains as men, so we can do, I think, the same sort of things. You have to remember that women's life cycle, though, is different, because many women will want and have children. And you have to think, how do you manage that and still perhaps have a career? And although we don't talk about it, women have a menopause, and they can get depressed and they can get tired at work. So I think that needs to be taken into account. And then, what do we have to accept? Well, I don't think we should accept anything. I mean, I'm absolutely, why should I accept that I'm less than a man? No, I don't accept that. I may be different, I hope, but not that I have to think that I'm subjected to a man. So I like the fact we're different. I very much like men, poor professors. It's not that I dislike men at all. I have a very good husband, but we ought to think of ourselves as mentally as capable. I think perhaps are slightly different in our interests sometimes, but no, I'm not going to accept that we have to put up with anything other than the very sheer physical jobs.
The second question is, somebody heard that in your career you had to get a low expectation of what women could do and be. So how did you develop and maintain your mind setting to break the stereotype and realize your position being equal to men?
Thank you. Yes, well, in my village, had I grown up without the grammar school, I would have been expected to work in the factories. My relatives, almost all my relatives, worked either in the factories or in the warehouses. So I was just very rebellious. I was not a good child. I really was not a good child. I used to climb trees. I would always be where I shouldn't be. I was not a well-behaved young child at all. And at grammar school, I realized there was something else. I didn't know what it was. But what the grammar school taught me was that I was quite bright, and that I could do other things. I did not know what they were. When I went to university, I did not really know what a university was, because no one in my family, and I lived in a very small village, had been to university. But when I got there, I then got involved in student politics. I became president of the student union, which is the big body, I think you must have it, in Tokyo. I travelled a lot with a group in the holidays. We went to Morocco, to Greece, to Spain, and I drove a lot in the mountains. I started to know there were other countries and other things to do, and I became more self-confident the more I did. I lived in a hall of residence in my university, and I became head of that. So I kept becoming head of things. Perhaps I was quite bossy. But I grew in confidence. That's really what happened. The more risks I took, and I then found a mentor who was the head of the hall of residence. She must have recognized something in me which I didn't know, but she would talk to me and made me realize I could do other things. So I think it was partly me being rebellious, and I'm still quite rebellious. I haven't changed really very much. And then people helping me, and as I grew in self-confidence, and I became more resilient. So really, that's what.
Yes, well, you already shared your experience and stories. So the first question is, how did you manage when you confront with many difficulties as a woman, and how do you think or behave? Who did you trust, and did you compromise?
I often tried not to think of myself as a woman, but as a person, rather than, you know, to treat it always as a feminine, masculine issue. But what would I do as a human being, I think was very important. If I thought people were being very sexist, I would sometimes ignore it because I thought that was the best thing to do. I think sometimes I would try and find collaboration. You know, I think women try sometimes to be collaborative and consensual. If I had to, I can be very difficult. If I have to, but I usually do it politely. I mean, I never write angry emails. I never write angry letters. It doesn't get you anywhere. You should stop and think and try always to be logical and rational. So it is sometimes very difficult if people make sexual remarks, and I'm conscious of this in Newnham, about women, I would absolutely stop them and tell them. And so if people are being directly to anyone I'm responsible for, then, and I think if you are a woman, a young woman, and people make directly offensive remarks, then I think one has to learn to tell them to stop, because that is not acceptable. I think you often need train, you know, you have to learn how to do it wisely so they don't get worse. So I think there are many ways, but I don't always think you should think it's because you're a woman, if you see what I mean. How to think or behave? Well, I think, as I've said, I think you should be courteous but firm if you're in difficulty. There are some times when it's easier to compromise and give in. I always think you have to learn what are the battles and what's the war. I always want to win the war and might lose one of the battles. Do you see what I mean? You know, in a war there will be several battles, but if I want to get to there from here, I won't always win every argument. And so I think you need to understand the things you don't have to win. I'll give you examples in my college. I knew I wanted a new website for Newnham. That was a war. But am I going to argue about the type of food we eat? No. No. I'm not going to care so much. But a new website, I'll fight for that. So I think you have to understand, when do you sort of say, yes, if you want to eat fish on Friday, we will have fish on Friday. I'm not going to say we'll have meat on Friday. It's too, or if they're going to argue about car parking, I never argue about car parking. It's too small, but a website is big. So choose your battles well. The question, who do you trust? I, on the whole, trust people until they give me reason not to trust them. So I will trust you, but if you ever give me reason not to trust you, I will be in here very suspicious. So on the whole, in my dealings with people, I am very trustworthy until I see, because I think automatically not to trust someone is a very bad way to start a relationship. But you know, I could give you lots of examples when I've trusted people and they've let me down. Well, I never trust them again. They will never know that, by the way. I think it's quite important if it's a colleague and they've really let you down. I would never show them that I would never trust them again, but I would.
I just have a small question. Do you give them a new chance to fix their...
to repair that?
Yeah, to repair that and this mistake.
Depends what the mistake is.
Yeah, okay.
Depends what the mistake is. A small mistake, yes,
Yeah.
but I could think of some big ones where the answer is no.
Don't make
It's just if people do something, if people do something that is really trying, that is really awful, that makes you think this person, I can't trust them, I will be polite to them, but I no longer feel they are, because if they could do that, they're more than capable of doing this and this. That's pretty tough, I know.
In my part, this is the last question. Somebody hear about it. Now in Japan there is an increasing awareness to equal women and men in the society, but it seems difficult for women to be satisfied with work-life balance. If women leave their jobs for the reason for childcare, it is difficult to get ahead. If they want to concentrate on their work, they can't have enough time to spend with family. They have to give up something. So now, some of them, or maybe all of them, sitting here, going to be member of society in Japan. If we find ourselves in a position where we have to make such a choice, so what criteria should we base on for choice or the best way of life?
Thank you. Well, this is a problem in the United Kingdom too, because more and more women are better educated and more women wish to stay in work. So I think that there are really several ways that different people can help. I think first of all, you need a good husband. You should choose him very carefully. I have a wonderful husband, you know, who really helps. So, you know, I would test this man pretty thoroughly about, but quite seriously, it is important, I think, these days, and I hope Japanese men, I do not know, I do not know, but the young Japanese man, may I hope, realize that he can have leave when his child is born, that he will think it reasonable to help. I know that's difficult, and therefore I think you need, in the employers, in the businesses and the universities, good childcare. I think that's absolutely crucial. I think it probably happens more in Japan than in England, that your family may be prepared to help a bit. But I think it's very sad if women feel they must leave work because of a family, because children grow up. You know, children just grow, and if you have left work and you may be very unhappy 10 years later. So I think it's very important that you have support, whether it's from your employer, your husband, your family, to at least be able to do part-time work, if not full-time, because otherwise you could be really unhappy at the end, and the type of job you could get, even if you're very well educated, if you've completely left the workplace, is often not a good one. So I think the question is, what do you have to do to enable people to stay in work, whether it's through your husband, employer, family, and to realize this is only a period of your life. Now, that does mean you don't see your children perhaps as much if you go to work as you would like to, and that's where I think choice really comes in, because you said what criteria should we base on for choice of the best way of life. I would say that you should follow what you most want to do and then try and fit things around it. So if you most want to be able to stay at work, I think you know that's what you should try to do, and society should try to help.